Okay, so today I'm going to be painting a Skitarii. A lot of people think that Skitarii are challenging to paint. Most adeptus mechanicus units, because they have all that little detail on them. I'm going to show you a really basic way to get them on the table up to battle ready standard using some very basic equipment. So we're going to start with the classic method base layer. We're going to be using some corn red on our friend here, and we're going to be covering the majority of the model, leaving just the areas where the equipment and the armor plates will stand out. Okay, now that the corn red has been applied, we are going to be going in with our second base paint. That is going to be lead belcher. Anybody who's painted just about anything in 40K knows that this is really good for a base gunmetal gray or anything else you just want to give that silvery sheen to. And since it's a base, we can apply other layers on top of it. Now, when you're doing this, I want you to notice that as I painted the Skitarii, sorry about the focus, I covered a lot of the detail that will be made metallic later over the large generalized area. I'm going to try to pick out those details as well as I can with my base brush, but if I feel it's too difficult, there's no shame in backing off and just doing the main metallic areas and waiting for the detail layer after the shader to go in and pick out those final details. That is entirely fine. So we'll move on to the next point. All right, now I'm going to go in and do what's called a recess shade. I'm going to be using black Templar contrast. Now, I know this is departing from the standard method. However, I found that these contrast paints, rather than being in the role of a full over cover like they were designed to be, they make excellent recess shaders. And this is a new technique I recently learned, and it makes your life so much easier, especially for the armor paneling. So I'm going to take care of that real quick, and I'm also going to do a little bit of lens work, but we'll talk about that when I get there. Alright, now that that's done, I'm going to show you real quick what I did. The recess shade is complete. You'll notice I did not restrict myself to just the metallic areas. It makes a really good all-over shader. Just in terms of look for the details you want to darken. Use it almost like you would a pot of null oil. Because the contrast paints are good at sinking into crevices, they are an excellent paint for mechanicus. I don't know if you can see it. The camera's focus is not the greatest. There we go. For the armor, it really gives that kind of oily, weathered, grimdark look. And just by running the brush over where the crevices are, it seeps into and gets a much deeper recess shade. Next up, I'm going to be doing that lens work I told you about. Now, for these particular lenses, I'm going to be going with a blue. And for this, once again, I'm going to be using the contrast paint Talsiar blue. It's or Talisar. I apologize if I mispronounced that. But I love this contrast paint for lenses, for glass. It has made so much of a difference when it comes to glow effects. I cannot recommend this particular shade enough. All right, that's done, and I don't know how well you can see it with the focus. Let me see if I can fix that. There we go. You can see the slight blue sheen on his backpack and on his eye lenses. And that was just with a dollop, just a touch of it to give it that little bit of glow. Now, the last thing to get this thing up to battle ready standard would be basing. And for that, I'm going to be using, of course, for a Martian troop unit, I will be using the Iron Earth, the Martian Iron Earth, because the crackle effect is really cool. Now, to get the most out of that, you really do need to base the model in another base paint so that when the crackle pulls back, it shows a difference. And I think that really adds a lot to the effect. So I'm going to be basing it today in a flesh tone Bugman's Glow. It might seem like a strange choice, but bear with me, it's going to look amazing. Alright, so the Bugman's Glow layer is now down, and we're about to move on to the texture paint for the Martian Iron Earth. First, some hints. You're going to want to wait for your base layer to dry down completely. And when you're doing this, it's okay to use a detail brush around the legs and the cloak if you're not confident in your abilities to use a base coat brush. There's no shame in making sure you don't get stuff up on. I personally don't mind getting stuff on the feet of my models, purely because I feel like it adds some realism, like they're trudging through the muck and the mud, and it's building up, because I put oil and weathering effects on everything else these guys have. Why wouldn't they have a little dirt on them? But you know, that's up to personal taste. I've seen models done both ways that I've loved. So we'll cut to the next one. Alright, so that layer of texture paint is on. And now for the final detail work. For this, you're going to want to be picking out the purity seals, the cabling that you would like to be a different color. If you want, this is not 100% necessary for Battle Ready Standard. I understand there's going to be a lot of people painting their armies now just looking to get that extra 10 victory points just by having their army fully painted. And if this kind of thing isn't for you, feel free to call this model done at this point right here. Just wait for the crackle paint to dry and it'll look great. However, if you do want to go that little bit of extra mile, it's not that difficult. Just take a little bit of Ultham Gray or any brownish, fleshish tone, and you can just pick out the paper on the purity seals. And since you've already done up the rest of the model in corn red, it's as easy as dolloping some Agrax Earthshade. I have a rather dirty bottle of it right here. Just on over the whole purity seal, and you'd be amazed the difference it makes. We will cut to that. And there you go. A perfectly average and standard Skitarii. This is an excellent method just to get a whole bunch of these guys done in a hurry if you're just looking to get them on the table. Final notes about basing. Make sure your whole army is based the same way. It'll really unify and bring the whole piece together. And also, one of the things that I really drive home when I'm doing army creation is the your dudes rule. When you're looking at models, you don't want to just make them cookie cutter how GW gives them to you right out of the box. Because then it just looks so repetitive. You get so many guys in similar poses and it becomes really noticeable. With Skitarii and Ad Mech in general, it's kind of difficult to get them to feel like your army and to feel custom to you. I recommend coming up with backstories. A rather dark bit of lore is when the Mechanicus quote-unquote assisted a fleeing group of civilians from Cadia and pressed them all into Skitarii service, lobotomizing them and brainwashing them and turning them into loyal servants of the Omnissiah. Now, if you want to add some references to that, throw on some Cadian imagery, add like just a little hint of their old self, and it'll really bring the grim darkness together and really make that army yours. It doesn't have to be from Cadia. You can come up with your own homeworld, but trading for bits from other human factions inside the Imperium, different guard regiments, maybe some Catachan, have some fun with some Talarn or Volstrin, heck, even go for some Iron Legion. Like, just make them yours. And I 100% guarantee you will enjoy your armies and your miniatures that much more. And that's all we have for today. I have been Kelran, and I hope you enjoyed this painting tutorial.